Good morning, colleagues, teachers. Mr. Koba speaking. Sorry. I'm here to do the memo discussion for paper 1 mathematical literacy, which was written on Friday. Now let's look at the first question. I'm not going to waste time. Let's look at the first question. The average inflation rate is given to you, and then you are given the information. Use the information above to answer the question that follow. Explain the meaning of the term inflation. And then the second one will be 1.1.2, during which year was the inflation rate. And then 1.1.3 will be determine the difference between the highest cost and the lowest cost of a taxi trip. Then the fourth one will be calculate the number of loaves of bread that can be bought with 270 in 2019. Now let me give you the solution to those things. But before I start with the solution, let's look at the explanation. Make sure you know the symbols and the explanation of the symbols on the front of the memo. Make sure you know how to those things, because they will be appearing on the explanation column. Okay, let's look at the first question then. The answer, remember the first question was explain the meaning of the term inflation. Now let's look at the answer. A measure of the change in the purchasing power of money over a period of time. Or learners can write the increase in the price of goods and services from year to year. Then those learners you'll credit those learners 2 marks. There's no other options. Those 2 options only. 1.1.2. It says during which year was the inflation rate the highest? During which year was the inflation the highest? Then the possible answer to that, it will be 2008. It's 2 marks, 2008. Nothing else is 2008, 2 marks. 1.1.3. It says determine the difference between the highest cost and the lowest cost of a taxi trip. Now, the answer to that, it will be 6 rand 97 minus 5 rand, and then you'll get 1 rand 97. There's a 1 mark for method with accuracy, subtracting correct values, and the CA mark for simplification. Now we have another option, but it's there on the explanation form column. I just took it to the on the memo. I move it from the explanation column to the part of the memo. Now it says 5 rand plus 1 rand 97, then is 6 rand 97. So the addition there, the learner will be credited if the learner choose to write that. That the learner will be given 2 marks. And then 1.1.4, it was looking for number of loaves. It says calculate number of loaves of bread that can be bought with 270 in 2009. Right. The original memo was the original answer. It's 270 divided by 5 rand 40. Then you give a learner a mark for method with accuracy by dividing by 5 rand 40. Then the answer should be 50. And then you give a learner for the CA mark. Now let's look at the CA mark. The other option, you'll see learners are reversing the whole thing. They will say 5 rand 40 multiply by 50, then the learner will get 270. Then the learner, you give full marks there, which is 2 marks. 1 mark for multiplying by 50, and then 170 another mark, 270 another mark. No. Let's say it will be 1 mark for 570 multiplying by 50. And then, yes, 540 multiplied by 50. Then another mark will be for 207 to get there. They do the reverse calculation. So the learner will get full marks. Now 1.4. I want to explain this thing of CA in the answer. Number of loaves. If you check, I have 270 divide by 6 rand 22 cent. The 6 rand 22 cent, I took it from the 2009. That one, cost of taxi trip to work. And then I divided it. I divided 270 by that amount. Then remember, I just wanted to show you how to see A. 270 is correct. Remember, you only see A if one of the numbers is correct. Then you see A, the answer, or number of loaves. Right, moving to 1.2. 1.2, it's talking about the exchange rate. The first question that it says, explain what the term exchange rate means. Right, the possible answer to that, it says it's the value of one currency relative to the value of another currency. So it will be 1 mark for value of one currency, another mark for relative to the value of another currency. It's an accurate mark. 1.2.2. It says state if the rand is weaker or stronger against the British pound. Then the possible answer will be weaker. The rand is weaker against the British pound. So it's 2 marks. So the learner will get 2 marks if the learner write weaker. 131. 131, question 1.3.1. It says, we are given, now open a car wash business and decided to observe the different types of cars that come for a wash on a particular Saturday and Sunday. Table 2 below shows his findings. Table 2 there is given. Now it says use the information above to answer the following questions. The first question, it says write down the data collection method used to collect the data above. Now the possible answer to that question will be observation. It will be observation. Nothing else. It will be observation. And then 1.3.2. The question says state whether the number of cars washed represent discrete or continuous data. Let's look at the possible answer to that. It says the answer is discrete. So if the learner writes discrete, the learner will get 2 marks. Then let's move to 1.3.3. Calculate the number of cars that were washed all together on Saturday and Sunday. Calculate the number of cars that were washed all together on Saturday and Sunday. Let's look at the answer. According to the question paper, on Saturday, the total cars washed were 35, and then on Sunday were 34. Now, let's look at the memo. So on the memo, it's either the learner will be writing 35 plus 34. It's 1 mark. And the answer of 69, another mark. Another mark. Or the learners will add all the cars that washed on Saturday plus the cars that washed on Sunday. Then the learner will get the same answer, 69. For adding all the cars, the learner will get a mark and the answer a CA mark for the total. But again, if the learner decides to write only 35, the learner will get 1 mark. And then if the learner writes 34, remember, it's the total number of cars washed on Sunday, and 35 is the total number of cars washed on Saturday. So you'll give a learner 1 mark if they write 35 only or 34. But if the learner writes 35 and 34, the learner will not get any mark. If the learner writes 34, 35, and 34, so the learner will not get a mark there. Right. The last question under question 1, it's 1.3.4. It says, write down the probability of a worker washing a Renault car on a Saturday. You go to Renault, you see Renault, it's 4 over the total number of the cars on Saturday, which is 35. We want the probability. Then the answer will be 4 divided by 35. It's 1 mark, it's an accuracy mark for the numerator, an accuracy mark for denominator. Right. If you check on there, I scratched that because I think there is, when you divide 4 by 35, you don't get that. So meaning the correct answers will be 0,114, and the other one, it will be a percentage 11,4. It means when the learner converted to a percentage, you still credit the learner. If the learner leave it as a decimal number, you still credit the learner. You give learner full marks. But remember, there is no penalty for rounding. No penalty for rounding. No penalty for rounding. I hope you have catched all the other possible answers or options to question 1. I'll move to question 2. Question 2 is finance and data handling. Question 2, it will be finance and data handling. Now, question 2, use annexure A to answer the questions that follow. Write down the name of the account holder. Remember, learners will be given the annexures. The annexure A, this is the annexure A, which learners will use to answer question 2.1. Right. Now, the possible answer to that question will be, remember, it was asking the name of the account holder. So the name of the account holder, it will be Mr. Lamani, MD, or Mr. Lamani or Lamani. You still give learners full marks. If they wrote Mr. Lamani, MD, Mr. Lamani, or Lamani. 2.1.2. Remember, we're still using the annexure. It says calculate the number of days included in the reading period. Now, if you check that, it says March, they had 13 days. And then for April, it's 23 days. And then when you add 13 plus 23, you get 36. Then you give a learner full marks if the answer is correct. But remember, again, I want to remind the colleagues to say, remember, when do you CA? When do you CA? Right, 213. 213, the question is, write down the unit of measurement that was used for the meter reading. Remember, we're talking about the tariffs. So the meter reading will be in kiloliters. So the correct answer will be kiloliters on the memo, nothing else. Kiloliters, you credit that learner. It's kiloliters or nothing else. Right. 2.1.4, it says show with calculations. Show with calculations that the value of A is 19,000 kiloliters. Right. Remember, we're still using annexure. Then you go to annexure, you look for those numbers, then you get 6709 with 3 zeros, and then you subtract, from it you subtract 6690 with 3 zeros, then you'll get 19 and comma 3 zeros kiloliters. Now remember, sometimes learners will do the reverse. They will add. Remember, we want to check whether if you with your calculation that the value of A is 19 kiloliters, learners will add 19 to 6690. Then they will get 6709, meaning they are doing a reverse calculation. Such learners will get full marks. Such learners will get full marks. Right, 215. 215, it says calculate the missing value B and state whether this amount is a credit or debit within the given context. Calculate the value of B and state whether this amount is credit or debit within the given context. Now let's look at the answer. Right, B, that is 43,27, and then you subtract that, it's minus 43,27, you subtract 6,49, then you add, you get the answer of negative 49,75. And then you conclude, the learner should conclude by saying it's a credit. Then the learner will get 1 mark for RT for the reading from the table, and another mark for subtracting values, the values. And then the answer, which is negative 49,75, you see A. If one of the values is not correct, you'll see A when one of the values is not correct. The other method, or the possible answer, will be 686,88 minus 165,84 minus 570,79. Then the answer will be a negative 49,75. Then the learner should conclude by saying it is a credit. Then the learner will get full marks for that. Right, I hope we are still together. We're moving to 2.2. Question 2.2. Right, 2.2.1. This is what is given to us. It says Mr. Lamani received the following domestic electric tariffs from Mfuleni local municipality during a high season period. So that is the information which is given to us. And then the question says, use the domestic tariffs block above to answer the following questions. 221, write down the minimum number of kilowatt hours of electricity that can be charged in block 2. In block 2, the minimum, it should be 51. Let's look at the possible answer. Yes, the answer is 50. There is the answer, it's 51. So you credit the learner. If the learner wrote 51, and then even the learner wrote 51, you still credit the learner. You give learner full marks without units. No, let's check. It says 2RT correct. Okay. No penalty. I'll put there no penalty for units. Let's not penalize for units, colleagues. Then you'll give a learner full marks even if the learner wrote 51. No penalty for units. Right, 2.2.2. The question says calculate 2.2.2, sorry. It says calculate, excluding VAT, the total cost for 350 kilowatt hours of electricity in rent. In rent. Remember, it says in rent, not in cents. But if you check our information, there is given in cents. Right, let's look at the possible answers. Now, if you check that answer, possible answer, it says 50 multiply, this one is in rent. You get 52 rent 70. So it's 3 marks. It is 3 marks for that. 1 mark for converting cents to rent, and another mark for multiplying by 50. 50 by 1,4540. Remember, it was cents converted to rent now, and then you see the amount. So that is 3 marks. Another mark will be 300 multiplied by 1,6385 equals to 491,55. There is another mark there. It says CA amount for 300 kilowatts. 300 kilowatts. Then you add those two answers that you have, and then which is 72,70. You add it with 491,55, and then the answer should be 564.25. Now let's look. There it's in rents. Let's look if learners use the cents. Learners will use the cents. Those learners who use the cents, this is how it looks like. And then it will say 50 multiply. Instead of converting, they use it as it is. Then you'll get 7270. And then the next one is 300 multiplied by 163,85 cents equals to 49,155. Then you add those two amounts. Remember, you're still working in cents. And then you get this amount. Remember this amount, 56,425. It's in cents. Then the learner should convert those cents to rent by dividing by 100. Then the answer will be 564,25. 564,25. Now, make sure the learner, if the learners, now let's look at this explanation column. Multiplying by 50, 50 by 145,40. This is in cents. Then you see the amount in cent, and then you go to the learner multiplied 300 by 63. You only mark the answer there. you don't mark 300 multiplied by, you only mark the answer, then it's 1 mark. And then for dividing by 100, in other words here, the learner will be converting from cents to rands. And then you see A, there's a 1 mark for correct, or even let's say the learner leave the answer in cents, then the learner will forfeit the 1 mark of writing this 1 mark of the answer, because the answer will be in cents, and the question says the answer should be in rands. So I think we understood that, colleagues. Let's move to 2.3.1. 2.3.1. Question 2.3.1. Right. It says Mr. Julie, a 36-year-old employee at a research company, and an annual income of 400,000 for the 2019-2020 tax year. And then it goes on, it says, bullet number 1, he contributes 7.5 of his basic salary to the pension fund. He also donates 80,000 per annum to a registered charity organization. This is very important, the whole donation is tax deductible. That is very important. And then bullet number 3, he contributes 3,550 to the medical aid monthly for himself, his wife, and 2 children. Annexure B shows the table, the tax table for the tax year 1 March 2019 to 28 February 2020. Remember, these questions are based on annexure and the information that is given to us. Let me just show you the annexure. Annexure. This is the annexure that we are going to use to answer question 2.3. That is the annexure. Now, let's look at the questions. The questions are as follows. Use annexure B to answer the following questions. 2.3.1. Mr. Julie stated that his taxable income is 280,800. Verify showing all calculations if his statement is correct. Hence, okay, that is 2.3.1. Let's deal with 2.3.1 first. 2.3.1. We are checking whether Mr. Julie is correct or not. So the learner should calculate 77.5 the pension fund, which is 30,000. 77.5% of 400,000 is 30,000. And then non-taxable amount, you add 30,000 plus 80,000, then you get 110,000. Remember, this is non-taxable amount, this one, meaning you are not going to tax that amount. Now, to get the taxable income or the taxable amount, you have to subtract 110,000 from 400,000. Then the answer that you get there is 290,000. Now, if you check, it's calculate 7.5, 1 mark for method with accuracy, and then an accurate mark for correct amount. And then you go to the next one, a CA mark for non-taxable amount, which is 110,000. And then another mark is subtraction from that, remember. you subtract the non-taxable amount from the taxable income from the 400, which is the annual income, not the taxable income, the annual income. Then you get the taxable income of 290. Then remember, you don't mark 290, you only mark, the mark is for subtracting 110 from 400, and then the answer will be 290. And the learner should conclude by saying, Mr. Julie is not correct. Then the learner will get 5 marks. Right, 3.2. Hence, calculate his annual income tax. Then you choose the brackets. That is the brackets. Remember, you see A. Colleagues, you see A from 3231. You see A from 2. If that 290,000 is wrong, if the learner write another value there, please make sure you check whether the same value from 231 was used to calculate 232, which is this amount. Then you substitute into the formula. Then it's 290,000 minus 195,580. Then the answer will be 59,802 and 20 cents. Then you subtract the rebates. And then from there, you check the medical credits. There is the medical credits, medical aid. And then you subtract those two, and then the answer will be 33,126 and 20 cents. Now let's check. For choosing the correct brackets, 1 mark. Substitution into the formula, it's 1 mark. Remember, it should be correct amount. And then CA simplification. And then another 1 mark is for subtracting rebates and medical credits. And then from there we have an annual income of that 33,126. You give full marks for if the answer is correct. Now we move into question 3. Because of time, ladies and gentlemen, we move to question 3. We move to question 3, sorry. This is question 3. It says, Mr. Mokebe, a grade 12 educator at Marematlo Secondary School, teaches learners about body mass index. He brings a digital bathroom scale in the measuring tape to class. Table 4 below shows the weight in kg, in kilograms of 60 learners in 3 classes. So that is the information which is given to us. And then it says we have 12A, 12B, and 12C. Use table 4 and the information above to answer the questions that follow. Define the term mode. There is the mode. We define the term mode. And then the answer, the possible answer to that. It says, mode, the data value that appears more than any other in a data set. That is the explanation of the mode. The data value that appears more than any other in the data set. 3.2. It says, name and the type of a graph. Name the type of graph that can be used to represent the above data. Now let's look at the possible answer. The answer should be compound bar graph. Not a bar graph, only compound bar graph. But if you look at the explanation column, 1 mark for compound and another mark for mentioning a bar graph. So if a learner writes bar graph only, the learner will get 1 mark. If the learner writes bar graph only, the learner will get 1 mark. Right, that is 3.2. 3.3. Determine the mean weight mass of learners in 12A. It says in 12A, right, you are going to add all the numbers in 12A. So learners will add those numbers up to the last number, which is 60. And then they divide by 20. And then when they add, they get 1082. They divide that by 2, they get 54. 1 mark for adding all correct values. And then another mark is for dividing by 20. Then another mark is for the answer. Now, if the learner leaves, or let's say the learner leaves one, the learner does not add one value, then the learner will get 2 marks out of 3. 2 marks out of 3. But if the learner leaves 2 values or more, the learner will get 0. The learner will get 0. Right, 3.4. Median for 12C, it's very important, colleagues. It says 12C. We're not expecting learners to use 12B or 12A. We want 12C. It's very specific. Right. Now it says determine the mean weight. It says find the median. Find the median of 12C learners in 12C. Median. Find the median in 12 of learners in 12C. So that is 56 plus 56,2 RT mark, and then for dividing by 2, another mark, which is the method, and then 56,1. The answer, the learner will get full marks for doing that. If the learner gets 56,1 as an answer, the learner will get all 3 marks. All 3 marks. Remember, colleagues, learners, colleagues should only see A if one of those numbers is correct. They should, colleagues should only see A if one of the values there is correct. 3.5. 3.5. The question says, calculate the interquartile range for 12C. The following formula may be used. Right. Q1, interquartile, is quartile number 1, which is Q1. We want the interquartile. Remember, for the learners to calculate the interquartile range, they need to find the quartiles first. Now, Q1 is 50 plus 52, divide by 2, then Q1 will be equal to 51. And then the learner should calculate Q3. 61 plus 61 divided by 2, it should be 61. Then from there, the learner will be able to calculate the interquartile range, 61 minus 51. Then the learner will get the answer of 10. Now let's look at the explanation form. For column, it says 1 mark, method with accuracy, adding and dividing. CA for simplification. And then it says 1 mark, simplification, and then substituting correct values into the formula, which is interquartile range is equals to upper quartile. Remember, we're given upper quartile minus the lower quartile. So for substituting the correct values, which is 61 minus 51, you get 10. For substituting the correct values into the formula, you get 1 mark, and the learner, for writing the correct answer, the learner will get another mark. Right, that is 3.5. 3.6, it says determine the ratio in the simplest form. This is very important. In the simplest form of learners with the height in the 40s to the learners with a height of more than 50 kilogram. 50 kilogram. Then the answer will be 6:14. Remember, we write it as a ratio, and then simplification of that will be 3:7. 1 mark, an accuracy mark for correct values in the correct order. And then another mark will be given for the simplification. Another mark will be given for simplification. Right, if the learner write 14:6 and the learner write 7:3, the learner will forfeit 1 mark for correct values in the correct order. The order is not right even though the values are correct, so the learner will forfeit that mark. And then I think we'll see that simplification according to what the learner has written above. So that's 14:6, and then the learner simplify there, and the learner will get 1 mark for CA for simplification. Because the first one, it says 1 mark correct values in the accurate order. In the correct order, sorry, in the correct order. So the correct order should be 6:14, but the learner wrote 14:6. The order is not correct. The values are correct, but the order is not correct. So simplification is correct. The learner will get 1 mark for simplification, which is a CA mark. Then probability 3.7. 3.7, it says determine the probability as a decimal of randomly selecting a learner who weighs more than 58. Now the probability will be, we have 17 learners out of the whole, out of 60 learners who weighs less than or who weighs more than 58 kg. We have 17 learners over the total number of learners, which is 60, and then the answer should be 0.3. Now it's 1 mark. It's an accurate mark for numerator, an accurate mark for denominator, which is 60, and then you see a probability. You see a probability. Remember, if one of those two, the numerator and the denominator, if one of those numbers is not correct, then you see A. You only see A if one of the values is correct. I will explain that again. I will repeat that. You only see A when one of the values, numerator or denominator, when one of those two values is correct. Right. No penalty for rounding. No penalty for rounding. That's all about question 3. Now I'm moving to question 4. Colleagues, because of the time, I hope I had to rush because I've started late. Now, question 4. Question 4, it's about question 4. This is question 4. It says Mr. Ntema owns an internet cafe. He rents a photocopier from Xerox company at a fixed cost of 1,600 per month and a 30 for every copy made thereafter. Mr. Ntema receives an income of 50 cents for every copy made. So that is the table. Use the information given to table 5 above to answer questions that follow. The first question there, it says calculate the missing value A and B. Calculate the missing value A and B. Now let's look at the possible answer. The missing value there should be, A should be 1,600 plus 30 cents multiplied by number of copies, which is 6,000. Then you get 3,400. So it's one accuracy mark for 1,600, one for method multiplying by 6,000, and the CA value of A. You see A, the value of A. Right, then B, the value of B, it will be 8,000 copies multiplied by 50 cents. Then the answer for B should be 4,000. Then there we only mark the answer of B, but remember to see A that answer. Remember to see A the answer. 412. Question 412. It says, write down the formula that can be used to calculate Mr. Ntema expenses. Right, this is the formula. It says expenses equals to 1,600 plus 30 cents multiplied by number of copies made. Or expenses equals to 1,600 plus 30 cents multiplied by C. Remember here you need to explain what is C. Where C is the number of copies made. Now let's look at the explanation column. It's 1 mark, constant amount, which is 1,600. And then another mark will be 30 cents multiplied by number of copies. It's not, that mark is not for 30 cents. It's for 30 cents multiplied by number of copies. Please, colleagues. Then the learner will get 2 marks. And then here it says the learner should get 1 accurate mark for constant amount, which is 1,600. And the learner will get 1 mark if the learner write 30 cents but multiply by C. But the learner have to explain what is C. If the learner didn't give you an explanation, then the learner will get 1 mark, which is the constant amount only. We don't give a mark for multiplying multiplying C by 30 cents, please. We need to give a mark when the learner explained what is C, where C is the number of copies made. I think we're still together, colleagues, especially in that one, please. The 4.1.3, determine the number of copies that must be made to break even. The learners can, after completing, maybe they can use the formula, or if they calculate to complete the table, they will get the answer from the table. Now let's look. The answer should be 800, nothing else. 800. They can take it from the table after completing B. There it will be 400. Remember B according to the answer there. B it's 400 according to answer 4.1.1. B it's 400, so they can take it from the table there to say the number of copies to break even will be 8,000 copies. Then the answer, the learner will get 2 marks. And then 4.1.4, it says calculate the profit that Mr. Ntema will make if 12,000 copies are made. Right, 12 copies are made. Then it will be 12 copies, 12,000 copies. It's 6,000 income. And the expense, total expense is 5,200. The income is 6,000. Then we want the profit. We want the profit. So it will be income minus, remember our income is 6,000, minus 5,500, 5,200, and the answer will be 800. But some learners will decide to say, okay, it will be, they do the reverse of that, 5,200, and then they add the profit, which is 800, and then the learner will get 6,000. We still credit those learners. We still give those learners a full marks. Please, they like to work to do reverse calculations. We still give learners full marks, or they can say, I'll write it here, they can say 6,000 minus 800, and then they will get 5,200. You still credit those learners who wrote something like that. They do reverse calculations. They do reverse calculations. 415, it says determine the independent variable. Independent variable, according to the memo, will be number of copies. It's 2 marks. And then 416, Mr. Ntema claims that if he offers a 5% discount for every order exceeding 15,000 copies, he will get an income of 8,550 for 18,000 copies. Verify statement by means of calculations. Let's verify. So the income for 18,000 copies, remember the income per copy is 50 cents. Then you multiply by 18 copies, you get 9,000. And then the discount of 5%, then it's 450. And then after that, we want amount after discount, which is 900, which is the income minus the discount of 450. Then the answer will be 8,850. Mr. Ntema is correct. Mr. Ntema's claim is correct. Then let's look at the under explanation column. It's 50. It's 1 mark for multiplying by 50 cents, and the answer 18,000 multiplying by 50 cents. That method, it's multiplying by 50. It's 1 mark. And then for the answer, which is 9,000, it's another mark. Then calculating income after the discount, 5%, by multiplying by 5% or 5 divided by 100, it's another mark, which is method, multiplying by 5% or 5 divided by 100. And then the learner will get another mark for 450. And then the next one for subtracting values, for subtracting 450 from 9,000, then it's 1 mark, and getting the correct answer, which is 8,850, it's another. There's no mark there. Remember, we had to prove that, so there's no mark there. Please, teachers, don't award mark there. And then for concluding, we give a learner a mark. We'll give a learner a mark. Please, colleagues, when you mark, make sure you look at the explanation column. It's very important that teachers look at the explanation column when they are busy marking. Right, that was 4.6. Then 4.6. Then we move to question 4.2. 4.2. I think it's the last question now. 4.2. There is 4.2. It says the box and whisker diagram that represent the marks achieved in mathematical literacy test for a grade 12 class consists of 20 learners is shown below. So that is the box and whisker, which is the minimum, that is Q1, that is Q2, that is Q3, and that is the maximum value. Right, it says use the information given above to answer questions that follow. Write down the lowest score obtained. The lowest score obtained should be 4 according to our information. Let's look at the possible answer. The correct answer is 4 on the memo, so the learner will get 2 marks for writing 4. And then the next question, it says define the term range in the context of the information provided. Define the term range in the context of the information provided. Now let's look at the possible answer to that question. It says range is the difference between the highest or the maximum value and the lowest or minimum value in a data set. Range is the difference between the highest value and the lowest value in a data set. Right, but remember to read the learner's explanations. When coming to explanations, colleagues, make sure you read the learner's explanations. Right, 423. It says what percentage of learners scored between 4 marks and 19,5? So which is, we want this percentage here. We want this percentage here between 4 marks and 19.5. Let's look at the possible answer. The answer should be 25%. Then the learner will get full marks. Even if the learner writes 25, let's not penalize for unit. Let's not penalize, no penalty for unit. If learner writes 25, you give learner 2 marks. We give a learner 2 marks. 424. 424 says determine the number of learners who scored marks that are less than the 3rd quartile. We want these learners from here who scored marks that are less than the 3rd quartile. In other words, from here to going down there. We want these learners from Q1 up to, from minimum value up to Q3. So we want this part. That is the part that we want. So determine the number of learners who scored marks that are less than the 3rd quartile. Here it is. Remember, colleagues, from 1st quartile, from the minimum value to the 3rd quartile, it's 75%. So that is why I have 75% there. It will be 75 divided by 100, multiply by number of learners, you get 15 learners. Then another option, learners will write, they will say, okay, let's look at this one. Maybe they will calculate from here, they will say, okay, from the 3rd quartile to the maximum value, it's 25. They can use that 25 and say 25 divided by 100 multiply by 20. Then they get 5 learners. They get 5 learners. But they continue to subtract that 5 from 20. Then they should get 15 learners. They should get the correct answer, 15 learners. So make sure you check that information. Then if they did that, they wrote up to 5. In other words, the learner will get 1 mark for 25% and another mark for multiplying by 20, and then you don't mark that. The last mark will be when they subtract to get the answer of 15 learners. So you're not going to give a mark for 5 learners. You give a mark for 25%, and then you multiply by 20, that is another mark, and then you don't give a mark for 5 because the answer is not 5. But if the learner continue to say, okay, 20 minus 20 learners minus 5, then it will get 15 learners. Remember, these 5 learners are those learners who got above Q level, Q3, above Q3. That is the 25 that I'm talking about, 25% that I'm talking about. So let's look at those things, colleagues. The last question, colleagues, 425. If a mark of a learner falls on the second quartile, what does it mean? If a mark of a learner falls on the second quartile, which is Q2, when it falls here on the second quartile, what does it mean? Let's look at the possible answer. The possible answer says it means that 50% of learners scored 22 marks and below. It means that 50%, remember 50%, it's Q2, just up to there. That is our 50% is Q2. So it means that 50%, of learners scored 22 marks and below. Or it means that 50% of learners scored 22 marks and above. That it means that those learners from there Q2 to the maximum value, it's still 50%. So it says 50. It means that 50% of learners scored above 22. In other words, it means that 50% of learners scored 22 marks and above. So learners will get 2 marks if they write the correct explanation there. And colleagues, please, I want to encourage you to look at the explanation column when you mark. Don't give learners zeros. Please look at the explanation column when you mark. Thank you very much for your time. See you next time. Thank you very much, colleagues.